So over the weekend, CNN released a video pretty much confirming something that a lot of people knew to be true, or at least strongly believed in, myself included, from a video I just released like the week before last, maybe, showing hip hop icon, record label executive, producer, etc., Puff Daddy, P Diddy, whichever name is most appropriate, physically assaulting his ex-girlfriend Cassie way back in 2016 during their relationship, a relationship that everybody knew was problematic on so many levels. It was so well known that this is a problematic relationship, or the problems of the relationship were so prolific that earlier this year, or maybe that was late last year, Cassie was awarded a settlement against Puffy for the way she was treated during their relationship. I believe a settlement worth $10 million. However, that entire time, Puffy essentially maintained his innocence and said that he didn't do anything. I don't know why you would pay $10 million to not do things. The things we heard about Puffy then and now are upsetting on a lot of levels. The video itself is incredibly triggering. I'm not going to show the real footage in this clip. In this video that I'm making right now isn't really about Puffy. It's about a specific response. Now, I want to be clear going in that I'm not trying to detract from the heinousness of what Puffy did, or the seriousness of those issues, or the issues related to a lot of the people I'm going to mention in this video. But I want to kind of have a meta conversation about how this stuff affects us. Specifically, for many of you out there, if you're like me, you grew up idolizing Puff, and not just idolizing Puff, idolizing Bill Cosby, idolizing Kanye West, idolizing R. Kelly. And that's just among, millennial elder black men such as myself. If you are a Nicki Minaj fan, if you are a former fan of Oprah or Michelle Obama or Barack Obama, J.K. Rowling's a good example of something that I know affected a lot of white people. This is a sadly ongoing thing that is going to continue to happen as we find out that our great artists and influencers and icons that made the world seem like a more interesting and curious place are exposed to be monsters on some level or another. Or if not just monsters, then at least exposed to not be perfect, right? The reason why I even brought this up is before all this Puff stuff, people may not realize whenever you watch this, but about a week ago, we had the biggest rap battle in possibly hip hop history, and definitely over the last, 20 years, Kendrick Lamar versus Drake. And in the middle of that, there was Macklemore, who has a modern history with Kendrick, releasing a pro-Palestine protest song that got really hyped up. And I think that was great overall. But it was followed by these calls for Kendrick and Drake and other people to say something about Palestine. And I understand why. I understand why we want these iconic figures to say something, but that's not what they're there for. And that is somewhat perverting to the goals of those efforts. And people aren't thinking fully as to how famous people and fame and influence ends up affecting real serious worldly issues. This is something that a friend of mine, Urban Revelist, just released a video about. You should go check that out. But for hip hop in particular, aside from talking about the issues and plights of black people, which I think is very appropriate for hip hop, you've never heard much from hip hop on world issues or Palestine in general. In fact, I think Lupe Fiasco is the only rapper I've ever heard talk about that issue in his music. And when I think about that, I think that's why up until October 7th, I really wasn't well versed on anything related to what's happening in Palestine. I had general knowledge, but the level of depth and understanding that I have about it now did not exist before October 7th. And I think to some of you watching this video, that's going to be disappointing. And I think for some who were watching this rap battle, they were disappointed that Kendrick, the woker of the two battlers, had not said, and probably will not ever say anything about what's going on in Palestine. And while I empathize with that, I think Kendrick has a very salient response to your frustration with him and possibly with me, which is that he nor I are your savior. In fact, I think it's important to keep in mind that none of your faves, whether it be Puffy, J.K. Rowling, Nicki Minaj, whomever, are actual saviors to the real issues that people care about. And their behavior is their behavior in and apart from their celebrity status. There's a weird thing that happens with celebrities, even at this YouTube level, where people make the mistake of thinking that we have more power than we do, or are incapable of bad takes, bad politics, bad behavior, or just general human shortcomings. That's the magic of the screen. This image you have behind me right now is a green screen, right? I'm in a closet. But when you put the effect on it and you get the matrix bubbles, it seems like I am bigger, wiser, more intelligent than I could ever hope to actually be. And so when I don't have the best take, or don't have a take at all, you as the viewer experience cognitive dissonance as to how that's possible. How is the internet's wise bread tube uncle FD not know what the fuck he's talking about? It's because I don't. It's because I don't. And you think I do because you view me through this screen. But I want to take it even further, because it's not just celebrities and people on the screen. It's also our renowned thinkers, philosophers, and activists, people whose words we quote and put on t-shirts and in our bios on social media. Great people with amazing words, but still very much people. One of my favorite jokes I used to make early in my content is Karl Marx was a fuckboy with at least one illegitimate child that we know of. Bell Hooks, who was one of my favorite philosophers, was a landlord who was far more invested in the status quo than you might realize. Michel Foucault's take on PDF file reading is really, really bad, and we don't like to talk about it. Another thing we don't like to talk is Du Bois, probably the most important black thinker in all of American anything, if not he's the most important thinker in American history, like the philosopher du jour for America. He's why we have Black History Month. He's why we have Pan-Africanism to an extent. Martin Luther King was a Du Boisian. His history and legacy is so full of awful moments. I'm surprised he hasn't been drugged more. And I could go on. If I wanted to, I can make a full-on long video about the numerous L's and bad behavior of almost all of our favorite theorists and philosophers. And if I were to add on your favorite actors, musicians, artists, it'd be a whole series from Kanye West to Salvador Dali. No one is above critique or safe from it, and so many have ugly parts of their legacy, and that's okay. Not okay, like that shit's not okay, but you get my point. And I'm saying that's okay because, like, you know what I hate? When you bring up someone or something significant done by one of those historical figures, for whatever reason, trying to make a point about an argument or, illustrate something important, and instead of someone opposing you on the merits of what was being said or even refuting it with their own debate or argument, they just bring up the bad thing that someone did once, as if that and what you're talking about is related. And most of the time it's not. Like, it'll be like, Marxist dialectical materialism really does a great job of explaining so many of the problems we have with capitalism today. And then the response will be, well, he slept on Engels' couch and didn't pay any bills. And that is true. It just doesn't make the first thing I said any less relevant or significant as an argument. Bell Hooks has an excellent analysis on how patriarchy is detrimental to the emotional health of men and that men suffer under patriarchy. And I think a lot of men would benefit from reading some of her work. Yeah, but remember what she said about the Central Park Five? And don't get me wrong, she shouldn't have said that about the Central Park Five. But that doesn't negate everything else you read from a Bell Hooks. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't an argument to excuse ongoing harmful rhetoric or behavior or justify past horrible behavior. I wish Bell Hooks at some point before she died had updated that particular take because it was bad when she made it, and even worse after the Central Park Five were exonerated. Hooks has done amazing things, amazing analysis on black men, and also not so great. And that's an important thing for people to get. Du Bois is my favorite sociologist, and as I said earlier, the most important thinker in the history of America. But he also was a snitch and believed in eugenics. William Edward Burghardt, what were you cooking when you supported Margaret Sanger? Margaret Sanger, what were you cooking with the eugenics in the first place? Now I have to hear about that shit whenever I defend the idea of pro-choice reproductive care. You see how these contradictions work. They're not actually working. They're just bad conflicts that happen when intelligent, talented, special people are also still people. And we have to document those parts too. Those two things can be true at once. Folks can be amazing in some circumstances, fall short in others. That makes it human. And if you are a scholar, intellectual connoisseur of art, or just a person who wants to be a critical thinker, you have to be able to engage in that complexity. And what I'm trying to do here is disentangle valuing someone's work or words from overvaluing their lives or personhood or character from this parasocial position that we often find ourselves in. Because when you don't do that, you really do a disservice to their work, and we're not operating on the highest form of analysis. As you all know, I am a day one Kanye West fan. I made 2 whole videos about why it was hard for him to be a fan years ago, and that was before shit got really weird. And low-key, I think I need to make a 3rd video, but that doesn't change the fact that his OG music, Kanye West 2002 to 2010, got me through tough times in college, my personal life, moments as a father, moments as a husband, etc. And in those specific contributions, that made me a fan of his music, but not him as an individual. So you won't find me dead online defending his ongoing past and present behavior. There's probably some other fan bases that could use that advice right now, by the way. I don't know what it is that brought us to this type of logic online, whether it's just social media, increasing stan culture, or just how hard life seems to be these days. But attaching to these charismatic or famous figures to the point where you identify with them on a personal level and can't identify or disentangle their bad behavior or bad takes from your love for their good behavior, it's not healthy. Be a fan or a scholar. Love the art or the theory or the discipline, but keep it in its proper place. It serves you and everyone better in that space, and only gets diluted when you have to warp reality in order to maintain a positive view of your fave, when you can just focus on the merit of what your fave made. When we're talking about sharing ideas, developing better discourses and critical thinking, we have to get out of stan culture and having that be a standard that we take seriously in the way we do that. It has to be stopped. One way to improve your ability to be critical about the media and information you consume is by having a more balanced diet of what that consumption looks like. If you're here, it's quite likely that you're in a left-leaning bubble. That's just how these online platforms work. And of course, I think that's overall a good thing, but it's not a good thing to be unaware of what oppositional forces are thinking and how they're moving and what is going on in their bubble. And this is why I'm always happy to offer you guys today's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is a news aggregate service that not only provides you with all the major national, local, and international news you want and need, but it also gives it to you in the most informed way possible. Every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the sources reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. So, for example, maybe you're of the mind that Mayor Eric Adams of New York is one of those great examples of black big city mayors. Nah, not really, at least from my perspective. In fact, Mayor Eric Adams has one of the most regressive tenures in New York City history. Something illustrated by this article where he talks about how great immigrants are at swimming. Yes, it is a mess. On Ground News, things are organized to help you understand everything you need to know about the story. Right away, you can see that 21 news outlets reported on the story. Of these 21 news outlets, 74% lean right, while only 21% lean left. You can also see the factuality and ownership information. Of these 21 news outlets, 33% are owned by media conglomerates. Just that little bit of information shows you how valuable Ground News is. You can even compare headlines to see how this bias can affect framing. For example, this Fox News headline specifically states Eric Adams is a Democrat and quotes Adams directly, while left-leaning Huffington Post leaves out Adams' controversial quote. One of my favorite features is the blind spot feed. The blind spot feed specifically aggregates all of these news stories that are underreported on one side or the other of the political spectrum. It's not enough to just Google something or look for your news on social media, because Google and all of these social media platforms share data about you and your search habits, and they are designed not specifically to give you the best information. Instead, they are designed to give you the best information that will most likely lead to you being more engaged, regardless of if it's the most accurate or comprehensive information on a topic. By getting your news through Ground News, you not only get to know what's really going on, You also learn about the sources that these news stories come from. You get an idea of what audiences and bubbles this news is going to, and you get an evaluation of the factualness of what you're reading. This makes Ground News the best site for keeping up to date with important issues. This is the power that Ground News puts back into your hands, and this is why I'm happy I can offer you 40% off their Vantage subscription, which includes unlimited access to all of their features. So subscribe today by going to ground.news/signify B-sides or click the link in the video description. You'll not only be getting access to the best news site around, you'll also be making it so I can still make videos like this one. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Ground News for sponsoring the video. I'm FD Signifier, and this has been Lightwork.